Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Keating, the Executive Director of the IHSAA. With me today are Assistant Directors Todd Tharp and Jared Chizek. And we're happy to be with you today to kind of walk through some of the guidance as we get to that exciting day when we're going to get back on the fields and get those kids going again. So we thought it'd be a good idea to run through a few things with you, give you a little bit of clarification, and then also give you the opportunity, if you need to ask questions. We do have a question and answer option for you. It'll be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please don't use the chat for those questions. Use the QA for questions and answers. Todd and Jared are going to try to answer those as we go along. You can view them if you want while this presentation is happening, or you can wait and check those later because we're going to post all of this. The webinar is being recorded today, and this will be posted as well. So if you think, Joe, I forget what they said about that, you can go back and look at it. And we'll also post the slides, the slide deck, so that you can go back and just look at the slides for some sort of a reference if you want. The goal today is to answer your questions and then really to get you comfortable with getting back on the field and getting around the kids, getting the kids around each other, and getting your communities together as you kind of embark on this shortened and unique baseball season, but one that I think we're all excited to get going. So we are going to go through some information that will be more AD oriented. If you're an AD and you were on this yesterday, then you probably will recognize that. I am going to go through that pretty quickly because the ADs have already heard it. And quite frankly, if you're the coach and you're not an AD, you're just worried about, okay, what happens in that fence? What happens in that field area, and what do we need to be aware of? I'd encourage you to think broad. Try not to get caught up in the weeds and the details. We will answer the questions about the details, hopefully, but think more broad. Think about just safety, common sense, and remember the big thing really is about minimizing the exposure to droplets. If we can do that, we have a great chance of keeping people safe, and we just have to figure out the best way to make that happen. Some questions will be answered with "it depends," because not every facility is exactly the same. Not every program is exactly the same. Not every program's equipment is exactly the same. So a little bit of this might be, well, if it's this, then this. If it's this, then this. And as always, we trust your judgment, and we know that you have your kids' best interests at heart. So we know that they're in good hands. We are going to go for 90 minutes or less. If we finish up before then we do. But we're going to stop at 90 minutes. We will continue to answer questions even beyond 90 minutes. So later on, if you feel like my question didn't get answered, go back in and look, and you'll see that we've answered those questions. We'll stay on together, the three of us, and go through anything we didn't get to during the webinar. And then I will try to zip through these slides as quickly as possible, but as comprehensively as possible. And I'll call on Jared and Todd occasionally to say, why don't you guys weigh in on this, since they live this, throughout the season. So with all of that said, we'll move forward. As you know, some of the general things, practice starts June 1st. The ADs have asked about signage. Tom Flores has been kind enough to develop some signage at the Girls Union, and he's designed that for both the boys and the girls. So those are on our website. If for some reason you're in charge of that, or you're an AD, just remember you can go to our website, download those and get them posted. We are working on Spanish versions of those as well. So we'll have that available for you. So a practice, again, no dugouts, just line the kids up, no parents there. Now, if you've got, if your field is located where there's a hill, 300 feet away from the field and a parent plops their chair down up there, you don't need to run up and chase them away. But if they're down by the field or they're on the fence or something, I think it's okay to say, hey, I just want to remind you, parents aren't supposed to be here. Players should use their own equipment as much as possible. That's not always possible, and when it's not, just use common sense. Clean it before the next person uses it, or certainly clean it before and after practice. It's probably a good time for me to say this, and I'll be saying it again. When we talked to the Department of Health and we talked to them about equipment and especially balls, we said during practice there might be 100 balls going in drills. Do we need to clean those after every drill? And the Department of Health folks, Dr. Padati, said you're kind of thinking of it backwards. The main concern is to not get stuff on your hands so that if you touch your face, then it gets transferred. So don't think about the equipment as much as you think about the hands. Have kids clean their hands a lot during practice. That's why you want them to bring sanitizer. And just, take a water break, clean your hands. Stop the drill, clean your hands, whatever it takes. But get those hands clean. And then, that doesn't mean you don't clean the equipment, but it doesn't have to be cleaned, every time somebody else touches it. So there's the sanitizing guidelines here as well. The last thing on there is no sunflower seeds. And again, that's because you spit a sunflower seed out, you've got droplets coming out of your mouth. We probably should add no spitting. That's going to take a lot, right? Kids are going to have to catch themselves for a while, and then they'll figure it out. But I think it's a case of it'll become cultural where they'll police each other. Somebody gets ready to spit, and maybe a teammate goes, "Dude, what are you doing? Knock it off." And they'll learn. It's kind of like putting a seatbelt on. You just have to get used to it. Temperature checks. We got a lot of we had a lot of questions about this, but in regard to, do we have to actually check the temperature? The answer is no. You ask the player when they arrive, do you have a fever? Did you have a fever when you were at home? Kids are supposed to check at home and then report to you. If your school district has the capacity to do it, do it. If you've got one of those handhelds that you can put up toward their forehead, and your district feels better if you guys do it, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. You should also take your own temperature, obviously. And we had a question that'll come up a little bit later is, should we take the temperatures of umpires? And the answer is, they're essential personnel. They're on the field. So if you're taking the temperatures of players and coaches, then yes. If you're asking for a report of whether somebody's got a fever or not, then you do the same with umpires. Just ask them, are you feeling well? Do you have a fever? My guess is the answer is going to be no, or else they wouldn't be there. But you've got to ask the question anyway. Anybody who is exhibiting symptoms should not attend practice, excuse me, or games, obviously. But that 24 hours, here's what we found out. That 24 hours came from us using the guidance that you use at school. If a kid has a fever and doesn't come to school, they're supposed to stay home until they've been fever-free for 24 hours. What the Department of Health locally are telling folks is 72 hours. So that 24 really should be a 72, according to the county health departments that we've been checking in with since we gave this guidance. And again, we didn't do this on purpose to give wrong information. It's just we went with what schools would go with. Check with the nurse or a medical professional at your school to know pre-existing conditions that kids might have. Some kids might be more vulnerable than others. You may want to encourage facial covering for that kid so that their risk goes down a little bit. Maybe a kid like that, you've got to be a little bit more conscious of sanitizing equipment that kid may be using, and that kid should be sanitizing his hands a lot more than normal. Coaches have to track, well, two things, coaches. Someone asked, do we have to write down everybody's temperature? And the answer is no. Do we have to write down every kid's name and then say, yes, they said they had a fever, no, they didn't say they had a fever? No, just the kids that have a fever. Then the rest of them are good. So if a kid says, yes, I have a fever, and you have to send them home, make sure you record that, get that to your AD, and keep it for yourself as well. And then track absences. So if you say, well, where's, where's Bobby today? And somebody said, Al, he had a fever, so he didn't even come to practice. Or his mom, doesn't like that he has a cough, so he's not here. So then, track that, write that down as well, so you have a record of it. And the record, guys, is so that we can do tracing if it's necessary. So people can trace back and say, okay, there was a potential possibility of where it came from. So that's the whole reason for that. We can go to the next slide. All right. So then when it comes to, positive cases, what we've told our ADs and we'll tell you guys is the school is responsible to report that to the local health department. What I told the ADs yesterday, and if your AD wasn't able to be on the Zoom, you can share this, is now is the time to do that. Call the county and say, hey, if we get a positive case, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to quarantine? Do you want that kid to quarantine for 10 days, 14 days? Does the whole team need to do that? Do we need to contact our opponents that we've played, in the past 10 days? Find out what they want you to do. Here's why we're telling you guys to do that and not giving you specific advice. There are 99 counties. There are 99 public health departments in those counties. And sometimes people get different information. A little bit of it is what's going on in the county. A little bit of it is what's your size of your district. A little bit of it is how far do you travel to play. There's a lot of variables, so it's important to let them weigh in. Some folks have asked, my school district is in 3 different counties. What do I do? And the answer is pick one. Just pick one and call that one, and then follow the guidance that they provide, and you will be covered. The next slide, please. So game stuff, we start on June 15th. Make sure the signage is there. That's more an administrative piece. Dugouts are permitted during games. And remember, you can extend the dugout toward the outfield foul pole, not toward home plate. We feel that's a little dangerous and we don't want folks there. Players are to use their own equipment and towels. Equipment when possible. Obviously, not everybody's going to have catcher's equipment. Towels, they should bring their own. Don't have a cooler of towels that are in ice or anything like that. And encourage kids not to share towels with each other, and to have some marking on them so they know who's who. And the same thing with water. We had a question yesterday: can parents bring like a cooler of Gatorade in? And the answer is no. We don't want multiple hands in the cooler. So no, they should just bring their own. If mom and dad are in the bleachers and want to have their own little cooler of stuff, and when Johnny needs another Gatorade, they can chuck it to him. That'll be fine. And then again, coaches are sanitizing shared equipment. And then temperatures, same deal as practice. Follow those same guidelines. Fans, that's not as much for you as it is for your ADs, but we're just asking them to spread out. People have asked, should there be a guide on that? And well, restaurants are using 50% capacity. That might be okay for your facility. It might not. It just depends on how big your facility is, how much room you have in your bleachers, et cetera. But we're really asking people to have personal responsibility and stay apart. And again, some ADs, and I get it, ask the question, well, are we supposed to be the police? And the answer is, I think it's more counseling, and educating. But if somebody refuses, then, you do the same thing you would do if somebody refused to stop smoking or to take their dog out of the park or stop yelling at the officials. If you've got to ask them to go and then, you tell them you're not welcome back, then I guess that's where we go. Hopefully we don't have to get to that point. Okay. All right. Next slide. Again, just reasonable measures. I think that's the key. And then, I think it's important that we're not going to put people in a position where they're in danger. No concession stands. We're getting a little pushback on this because we said places like Principal Park or Riverfront Stadium or places like that, minor league parks, Colonel Stadium, those are licensed food establishments and they are inspected by the state. So we've said they can If the county health says they can run concessions, but schools cannot. Some school facilities, I get it, they're licensed, but for now the DE wants to they don't want to add more variables to this thing. Right now the variables are players, coaches, umpires in a open but confined area. They don't want to start extending things and adding variables that might contribute to this, because they're trying to track what is going on. If we open these two sports, what's going to happen? What will happen to the numbers? And if they start adding things like allowing concessions to be sold, that adds variables that could contribute to that uptick in numbers, and then it gets a little bit messy. So, and then again, contacting public health if there's a case, and I would do that now and say, what do you want us to do if that happens? All right, next one. Transportation. The DE came out yesterday with guidelines, pretty simple, similar to practice and games, taking temperatures or asking people, do you have a fever, before they ever get on. They're also, they understand, if you're going to social distance on a bus, if there's 77 seats on the bus, then you can put 13 kids on it. Well, a lot of places don't have the budget to send 2 or 3 buses. So what do? Well, you can do some alternative things, and those are listed in that guidance, but I'll just highlight a couple and then just refer you to that guidance, which again, we will post on our website. Kids wear face coverings, and maybe you can put more than 13 on there. If you've got siblings, they can sit in the same seat next to each other, and then maybe you can spread everybody else out as well. And make sure they're in the same seats going to the game and coming back from the game, similar to a kindergarten field trip where you got to assign seats for them. And then other arrangements. Maybe your district already has policies or will need to put a policy in place, but a lot of districts allow parents to drive, and you may have to have waivers, and you may have to have them sign the DAP forms and watch the safety videos, et cetera. But that is a way to help with the transportation stuff. So I would check with your district and the policies that they have on transporting students, and then look at those DE guidelines and see where it fits in. But again, hopefully people will use common sense and be able to get this worked out. When I put my AD hat on from past years, and I thought about, okay, how would I deal with this? First thing that popped into my mind was, what did I do when a bus didn't show up? When we were supposed to have a bus to go to a game and it didn't get there. Then we went to plan B, and in our case, maybe not yours, that was parents, and coaches drove their own vehicles and got the kids there. So think about it in that respect. All right. So my Department of Public Health talking points. The key thing again is droplets, as we mentioned. And what we were told is that, the research is telling us that it becomes a risk if you're less than 6 feet away from someone for about 30 minutes, then it really becomes a risk. We've heard from local county health departments lower numbers than that, 15 minutes or 10 minutes. But if you think about baseball, even 10 minutes less than 6 feet apart from someone doesn't, in a row, it just doesn't happen much. Maybe in the dugouts, during an inning, but a catcher and a batter, probably not 10 minutes, especially because the batter steps out. Maybe we need to, I know we don't like when batters step out and then step back in. Maybe, that's an okay thing. Umpires can step back between batters, so they're not right on top of the catcher. First baseman doesn't hold a runner for 10 straight minutes. Those things are not happening. So we're in pretty good shape there. Hand washing, hand sanitizing is the best way. And then trying to teach kids, not to touch their face. That's going to take some time, but we're all becoming a little bit more aware of that. Face coverings. People have asked, can they wear face masks? Yes, they can wear face coverings, but they don't have to. When we talked to the Department of Public Health about this, they mentioned that, it's more of a psychological sense of security. That's fine. If they feel better wearing them, let them wear them. But it also creates some problems. And one thing it does is it encourages touching the face because they're not used to having it on. As soon as you touch a mask, its effectiveness is done. It doesn't work anymore. If it's not worn properly, if it's not over the nose and then down by the chin, it's not going to work. And the other question or the other issue is, you know, if it's 95 degrees and it's 70% humidity, what's it going to feel like to have a mask on your face? It's not saying they're not valuable. They are. But again, when it comes down to it, are the droplets going to be exchanged in a baseball game in a normal situation if you're less than 6 feet apart during the game? Chances are not real good. Now, if you get in a heated argument with an umpire and you're face to face, that's probably not a good idea. My guess is you are going to share some droplets. So, you know, you just have to advise your kids, you know, counsel yourself in those things and try to stay as far apart as you can and not get too close for too long, right? The district has some things to think about. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is I know some of you, because of the situations, maybe your ADs are on 9-month contracts, maybe you're the AD, but we are saying somebody other than the head coach needs to be the supervisor at the game. So that if there's a situation or questions that fans have or the media has while the game is going on, or anybody else has for that matter, you need somebody there that can answer those questions and deal with those things. As the coach, you don't need to go outside the field and start dealing with fans that maybe are getting too close to each other. We don't want umpires doing that either. So we do encourage, we do want a supervisor there. Districts can provide stricter guidelines than are in place. Just because we say you can have fans, you could go all the way to not having fans if that's what you wanted to do. I'm guessing you won't, but if you want to say first game no fans, second game parents only, third game maybe parents and 100, that's up to you if you want to do some sort of a phased-in approach. Okay. Screening and testing. So what happens? Let's say you know, things aren't going well. Somehow COVID has infected us. What do we do? Excuse me. Your school district at any time can say it has gotten too dangerous. We are not going to do this. The teams that we play are now in hot spots, and we don't want to travel there, so we're just not going to do it. Or, you know, 2 or 3 of our players have it. We're done. So you can shut it down. Your school district can shut it down. By the same token, the county health departments or state health department could shut it down. The IDPH could shut the whole thing down for us. I mean, we have to defer to them. We don't think that's going to happen. We certainly don't want that to happen, but they could. So those would be the 2 ways. Either your own district says, no, we're finished, or the Department of Health says that. You know, this is common sense. I think the answer to this, you know, don't even read the rest of it. The answer to this is it's never enough. Just be clean, you know, over clean hands, over clean equipment, over clean clothes, and that'll help. It's not going to guarantee anything, but it's absolutely going to help. Social distancing. What should practices look like? So, you know, we already kind of went through those things. Baseball is unique in that you're already doing what the NFHS is saying we should do, which is practice in pods. So you've got, you know, 5 or 10 kids in a drill. That's fine. I'd say if possible, assign the pods and keep the kids in the pods for the whole practice, so they're not, you know, interacting closely with other players. You know, the other thing is during drills, you know, sometimes you have 3 kids that are at the same position during a drill, and just tell them, just give them room, you know, give not just the guy who's in the drill, give him room, but give the next guy in room, you know, don't stand right next to him, move away. And again, everybody's getting used to that 6 feet thing, so it should be a natural for Dugouts, we already talked about that. You can put kids behind the dugout, behind the fence, the playing fence. You don't have to send them down the foul, down the foul line toward the outfield. If you've got room behind the dugout, outside fence, put them there. If your dugout's big enough, that'd be great to have everybody there, but my guess is probably not. Jared, Todd, do you guys have anything to add to that?
Most important thing is, again, if you are going to extend the dugout, it cannot be closer to home plate unless behind the fence.
Good. Okay, good clarification. All right. So who will be allowed in the dugout? Well, I say dugouts are two things. They are sacred space, and if I get to be in there, I'm special. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. That's how people feel. If I get to be in the dugout, I'm part of the action, and so I want to be there. So the dad that keeps stats for you, he wants to be in there. The person doing pitch count, the official scorer might want to be in there. Bat boys, bat girls, they might want to be in there. You may have a local media person that's used to being over there. We're saying no. Only players, coaches, trainers, and umpires. That's it. That's all that get in the dugout, including that area that's extended. Those folks should not be. Those are the only folks that should be there as well. Can spectators watch practices? The answer is no, but again, you don't need to run 200 feet or 300 feet to chase somebody off a hill. I'd say if they're far away, no big deal. But they come down by the fence or they come into the ballpark, I'd say, ask them to go back to their cars. Todd and Jared, anything on that?
No,
okay.
That is good. Nope.
Okay, great, thank you. Coach interacting with an umpire. All right, let me just start with this. There's going to be enough stress during this whole thing. Be kind. Just understand that this is going to be difficult for us at the beginning to get comfortable with everything. So just make sure when you're interacting with an umpire, you're respectful enough to stay apart, and we're asking the umpires to do the same. All right. Anything to add to that, Todd or Jared? Okay.
No, sir.
All righty. Limitations on rosters, the short answer is no. Don't need to do that. Who should be involved with a coach's trip to the mound? And I told this to the ADs yesterday that, unless you're trying to figure out how many chickens you have to sacrifice to take the curse off of Jose's glove, and you're trying to figure out how to unjam Luke's eyelids so he can breathe through them, and trying to make decisions about what to give Jimmy and Millie for their wedding, you don't need a big crowd at the mound. And I think ahead of time, just tell the kids, when I come out to the mound, stay where you are unless I call you over, and they'll be fine. Sometimes they're just used to, the infielders are just used to coming to the mound to see, as soon as they see you come out of the dugout. Limit the number of people that are there, and you'll be okay. Todd, Jared, anything for that? Okay.
Nope.
Sounds good.
Preferably, not to go back, preferably again, there's times you need to be close to your pitcher, but ideally, if you can be 6 feet, do your best.
You got it. Yep. Maybe we should make everybody on the opposing team put their hands over their ears so they can't hear anything that the pitcher and the coach are saying. Who knows? All right, so looks like there's a typo here. Should be the baseball head coach, right? Not softball head coach. And there's your guidelines for the pregame. Lineup cards, yes. And then handshakes are a no. I think, even fist bumps, things like that. And it's gonna just feel a little weird for a while. But we're worried about droplets being on kids' hands and then getting to, whoever they touch. So this is not only with their opponent, but probably their own teammates. They should be limiting that as well. Am I forgetting anything there, Jared or Todd?
No.
All right, great. Capacity at a facility, this again is a little bit more of an AD thing, but it's sort of a, you know, it depends, right, on the size of your facility. The guidelines that restaurants again are using is 50%. So is that what you should do? Maybe. Baseball is unique. You know, some people sit in the bleachers, but a lot of people bring their own chairs. They can spread out. They may not be able to sit exactly where they're used to sitting because they have to spread out, but I'm guessing they'll adapt. They'll be able to figure that piece out. And the same thing in the press box. It's going to be the school district's decision on how many people get in there and who that is. And again, press boxes vary in size, so it's not a one size fits all where we say you can only have 3 or 4 or 2. But we're not going to do that because we know your sizes vary. All right, we can go to the next slide, I think. And face coverings, we said this, but here's what I'm going to add. You may require, if you want, your own team to wear face coverings. You may not require an opponent to wear a face covering. That is up to them. You can request. You know, you can say, hey, we've got a kid that's that's vulnerable here, and it would really make everybody feel better if your team had face coverings. Would you consider that? If the team said, no, we don't want to do that, then you've got a decision to make. Do you want to play that team or do you not want to play that team? But you're not going to be able to require an opponent to put on face masks. You can do that with your own team, but no one else. Providing hand sanitizer, that's going to be, you know, the players should provide their own, but if your school wants to provide it for them and they each have, you know, their own, that's fine. They can do that. All right. Anything there, Jared or Todd? All right. Face shields, that's a no because it is dangerous. We'll just leave it at that. So, you know, that whether it looks like a welder's face shield or other, the chance of injury to somebody else if they come in contact with that shield is a concern. So the answer on that is no. Does each player need their own batting helmet? The answer is no, but you know, certainly we'd encourage that. Might be a great booster club ask for a time like this, and say if it sure would help us if every kid could have an assigned helmet, and then you just keep them for, you know, future years, obviously, but it would cut down on some of the concerns, and they don't have to be the same color. So, you know, don't worry about that piece of it. Should they have their own bat? Again, as much as possible, yes. Maybe that's another booster club ask, is can we get additional bats so that there's not as much sharing? That might be possible as well. Okay, Jared or Todd, anything for that?
Again, big thing is it's all encouraged. They do not need to have their own equipment. It just needs to be sanitized as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. All right, same thing for the first question on this slide. And then, you know, we already talked about the baseballs being sanitized. You know, in practice, you don't need to sanitize them after every drill, but before practice, after practice, probably a good idea. But cleaning hands is the key. Now, if a pitcher goes to his mouth, regardless of where he is, but if he goes to his mouth and then touches the ball, the umpire needs to kill the ball, kill the play, and that ball needs to go out. That ball is going to go to the defensive dugout to be sanitized, and then the player is going to need to sanitize his hands after that before the next ball is thrown in. The same we think is true if it's a cool night and a player blows into his hands, then touches the ball. That ball needs to be killed, thrown out, sanitize the hands, new ball thrown in, and then everybody will be a little bit more comfortable that there's nothing on that ball. Okay. Baseball bat, again, as much as possible, certainly before and after practice if those are shared. All right. Anything from you guys on that one, Jared and Todd? No. Okay. All right. Batting helmets, same deal. Catcher's equipment, same deal before and after practice and games. And then how often should they use sanitizers? Never enough. Never enough. Just as much as possible. Okay. We go to the next one. Water cups, no. They've got to have their own bottles of water. They should probably bring multiple because you're not going to have fountains turned on or water stations. They'll probably have to have maybe their own small cooler or their own, but certainly multiple bottles that they can use. And somebody said, well, why can't we have a drinking fountain or a hose or something? Well, because you got too many people touching it, and you can't control that. How often should maintenance equipment be cleaned? I'd say, daily. Ask your maintenance guys, how would you guys do it? What would you do to clean this stuff? What kind of stuff do you have that you could give us? And that would help. And then public restrooms, again, it depends because no two facilities have the exact same size of restrooms. If you want to say, no more than this number of people in there at a time, then so be it. Okay. Dugouts cleaned, again, daily, and hopefully, I know hope's not a strategy, but hopefully your maintenance department, your custodians will do that. But if not, again, ask them for their cleaning. What cleaning supplies would they use to do it if you're responsible for making that happen? Okay. Is the weight room allowed? The answer to that one is no. You could bring stuff out though. So if you've got bands or ropes or other equipment you want to bring out to the field, absolutely. But here's the deal, guys. Again, we're moving from this large outside area and bringing kids into a confined area. We're adding variables, and we're adding things that could impact whether somebody's going to contract it or not. And we're really trying to limit the variables so we can get a handle on this thing. Is it the actual sport that's causing it or something else? Can a gym be used? Yes. Gyms are big enough to spread out. You can definitely do that. Can football field turf be used? Absolutely. You don't even have to wait for it to rain. If you've got multiple teams, so you've got a varsity team on the baseball diamond, and you've got a sophomore team that's going to practice next, the Sophs can be out on that turf if your school district allows it. They can be out on the turf warming up before they get to come on the baseball field. All right. Inclement weather. Every school is supposed to have an emergency plan in general and for any situation, and so this would fall into that category. You can put people in the gyms or auditoriums or down the halls, just getting them spread out. The key for us is, what's the imminent danger? The imminent danger isn't COVID at that moment, it's the tornado, or the thunderstorm, the lightning. You've got to get them away from that. And so, yes, they can go inside, okay? Pre-game meetings, you can see it. I won't read it to you. Just, again, common sense, stay apart. Todd, Jared, any unique things there we should be calling attention to?
You will still exchange a lineup card. We're going to tell the umpires when we meet with them on Monday night. Introductions, making sure that they know who the two head coaches are and also understand what the ground rules are. It's going to have to be business-like this year to keep things moving and to keep distancing intact.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the home team's going to provide the balls. Then whoever's on defense is in charge of the balls. That's what it comes down to, right? So if a ball goes out of play, it's going to go back to the defensive team's dugout, and then they're going to be responsible for it. Umpires are not going to handle the balls. I know that's going to be a weird thing for them, but if they need to inspect a ball, then the catcher is going to hold the ball and let them see it, and they can observe it from there. So really, the umpires are following a rule that says don't touch other people and don't touch other people's stuff. So they're not picking up a bat and handing it to a kid, or they're not picking up a a catcher's mask and handing it back to the catcher. Leave stuff alone. All right. Substitutions will be a little bit different. The coach will get that, in passing, rather than having the umpire go over to the dugout. The umpire should not go to the dugout for that. And you can see the rest of the guidelines there. Todd, Jared, you want to weigh in on any of this?
The preference would be on foul balls for the team on defense to field that foul ball, but we understand at some point that's not going to be feasible. Again, nothing is going to happen if all of a sudden, if an offensive player touches it, again, we'd recommend sanitation of the hands, wipe the hands at that point. But preference would be if your team's on defense, you're the one responsible for the foul balls. So then those balls just come back to your dugout and we're not worried about crossing back and forth. Again, just a recommendation. If an offensive player touches it, it's not the end of the world.
Okay. All right. By the way, Mr. Tharp will join us again. He lost his internet connection. He'll log back in and we'll see him again pretty soon. Some rule adaptations, the hand to the mouth, we've already talked about. That's the ball will be killed and, new ball comes into play and then the player will have to sanitize his hands at that point. The plate umpire will be behind the catcher. And it's still, we feel strongly that even in sub-varsity games, we don't want the umpire out on the field because you get a runner on first and now all of a sudden you got two umpires in the same area. And then we're creating a little bit of a danger for that umpire to put him out that close to the mound as well. So we're saying work behind the plate, step away in between batters, and which a lot of umpires do already. And then, hopefully we can maintain the distance and not be that close for 10 minutes straight. All right.
Like just to throw in there, the ball is not dead until the umpire kills it. So we have to trust the umpires are going to make the call correctly, but the ball is not dead. So again, could someone be picked off or a pitch thrown between that? It could. The umpire has to kill the baseball and they'll be instructed to do so.
Okay. All right, some miscellaneous things that came up. Can coaches have contact with pitchers and catchers no, not live, not in person, but you can do virtual, that as you have been doing. So until June 1st, just let them know what you want them to be doing, and hopefully they're doing that. My guess is when the news came out that we were going to have baseball, there were a lot of kids that grabbed gloves and balls and got outside and started getting after it. And that's what we wanted. Postseason schedule is the same. We're not going to do anything different with that. And it will be right now, the plan is to be at Principal Park. They want it there. We want it there. And as long as Polk County Health says we can have it there, then we have it there. Jared, Todd, and I have a meeting with those folks next week to kind of walk through the stadium and talk through what changes might need to be made. But that's our goal right now is to have the state tournament at Principal Park. Schedules are up to local schools and conferences. That's no different. Adaptations to game limitation, nope. We don't think you're going to play 40, but if you've developed 12 pitchers and you want to play, 4 dates a week, then, I guess so be it. But we're going to leave that to you to use your good judgment about what will fit your team and what will be best for your team. You might be a school that's only got maybe 3 kids that can throw for you, and you're going to want to limit the number of games you have. But otherwise, we leave that up to you. If you don't want to play another school because of something related to COVID, then it depends on who makes that decision. If the Department of Public Health says that game shouldn't be played, it's no contest. So let's say that a kid at school A comes down with COVID and the Department of Health in that county says then your team cannot play because of that. Then the game that was scheduled is a no contest. However, if the school chooses on their own to not play, then it's a forfeit. So if you say, there are a lot of cases in that county or in that town, and we just don't feel comfortable doing it. Absolutely understand. It'll be a forfeit, but well worth it, right? For peace of mind and safety. So those are the two differences. Again, levels are up to school districts other than middle school. And we're getting a lot of pushback on this. And let me tell you where we are. The decisions that are made in a moment of time. They're not made with assumptions about what's it going to be like in 2 weeks or what's it going to be like in 4 weeks. It's made like, what do we know right now? So we make that decision and then, we live with it. Down the road, in some cases, in some topics, in some situations, we might say, well, we're going to rethink that now. But in regard to middle school baseball, let me reemphasize. We've said high school baseball and high school softball can occur, and that gives us two variables and however many levels, we have at the high school level. If we added junior high, depending on what district you're in, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4 junior high teams. And so now we're adding more variables to this, which are harder to track. So we just felt like with the Department of Ed, as we talked through this, we just felt like keep it to high school. Now we all know things got complicated when the governor announced that youth sports could resume. It kind of put junior high in limbo because they're not youth sports and they're not high school sports. But we are still not, we're not 100% solid in our baseball, softball stuff right now. You see our guidance changing a little bit already. Hours with fever, for example, number of minutes closed. We're trying to deal with that. And so the junior high thing did get kind of caught in the middle of that, but that's where it is. And until we think differently, it's not going to happen. And I'm not opening the door on that. I don't want you to believe. I don't want to give you the impression that maybe they'll let it happen at the end of June. I don't see that happening. So, but other levels, freshman, sophomore, JV, that's up to your district. First date for an inter-squad scrimmage, you can do that anytime because those are practices. You just can't have fans there, and you can't have a soap game or the Gatorade game or whatever it is. So other school scrimmages you can't do until after June 15th, but inter-squad with no fans there, you could do anytime once June 1st gets here. Okay. And we can go to the next slide. There we go. So these are just some other things, you're going to have to think about, doing starting lineups. If you announce kids and they go out to the foul lines, you're going to have to figure out a way to get them apart. Celebrations after home runs, obviously the big group greet at the home plate is not going to be able to happen. Post-game handshakes are kind of a thing of the past for now. The mound we've talked about, picking up bats, who's going to do that if after somebody has batted and they're on base now, who's going to go get that bat? It should be a designated person maybe in the dugout. Return of foul balls, we're going to take those to the defensive dugout, but if they do come to the other dugout, then we'll deal with it. We'll get that ball over to the defensive dugout somehow. And so, things that maybe are normal parts of the game are going to have to change a little bit. And we're just, we're going to keep thinking of stuff like, well, what about that? We forgot about that. Just let us know, and we'll do what we can to get you the answers for those things. Todd and Jared, are there things here that you talked about that we should bring it to their attention?
We're not trying to be the no fun league. We're at this point just trying to have everybody stay safe and follow the guidelines given to us from the Department of Public Health, DE, and those above us.
Mm-hmm. And another item on there too that we'll be visiting with the Music Association about is having a live national anthem singer. If you do play your anthem, maybe just have it be just a tape recording of it. And again, instead of having that additional person there, depending on where they might be. So we'll discuss with him what he thinks that guidance is and provide that to you in a further addendum.
Okay. Next one is pitch count. No change in the pitch count. We trust you guys to take care of your kids and know when they're ready to throw, you know, X number of pitches in a game. That's in your hands. So, you know, you know how much your kids have been throwing, and those who have and those who haven't. So we leave that to you. The postseason, when it comes to pairings, we believe that, you know, traveling long distances increases, you know, some of the risks. So expect more geographical bracketing, and that's solely because of travel and having kids in vehicles for extended periods of time. Look for increased time between double headers. So in those early rounds, when we play double headers, we'll probably start that first game earlier, so that there's a big gap in between, so we can get people out from the first game before the people come in for the next game, and we have time to clean things up. The classifications have been approved by the Board of Control, and so if a school decides they're not going to play, then we'll adjust the brackets. We're not going to change classification. It'll stay the same. So the dates are there. You can see for the release of the pods, and the seed meetings. Jared or Todd, anything else on that?
We talked with our advisory regarding both the pitch count and postseason regarding pod releasal and how we want to handle the postseason coaches meeting or how we want to bracket. The advisory felt strongly to keep the coaches meeting for the seed meeting rather than doing the random draw that we had talked about, in order to better, I mean, at this point we understand there's going to be 2 weeks of games prior to the 1A, 2As, and 3 weeks between 3A and 4A. You as coaches are going to know ideally who the top 3 or 4 teams are that you're going to attempt to split at those meetings. A blind draw would not do that when literally we're pulling names out of a hat. So the advisory wanted still to have coach input, coach control on the bracketing process. So that's how we're going to go with it. And again, it's going to have to be, for some of you, it's going to be a tough, you know, it's going to be a sell job on, here's our team, my players are coming around at this point, versus here's my body of work so far over the first 2 weeks. I've beaten 3 of the 8 teams here in the same district.
Okay.
Also, to make a note, we have in the past, we've done our best to make 1A and 2A sub-state finals to be neutral. We are unsure at this point how many schools are going to want to host a neutral site contest. So if a sub-state final game at the 1A, 2A level is played at someone's site, we're just giving you the heads up now, is we will attempt to find a neutral site contest. But if schools are telling us they do not want to host that, we are more than likely going to have to look at one of the 2 teams potentially playing in that contest.
Okay. All right. We've got about 30 minutes or so to go through questions. I think Todd, maybe, and Jared have been trying to answer those as we have been doing our presentation. So we can run through these and give you some quick answers. And then the ones we don't get to, if there are some, we will answer after we end this webinar and get those posted as well. I do want to, before we end up running off this thing, I want to thank Todd and Jared for being with me today and sharing their expertise. And I want to thank Tom Florian from the Girls Union for helping us with the technology today and getting us set up and running the slides for us. So guys, thanks a lot. And obviously thanks to all of you coaches who are with us. There are almost 400 of you here, and you know, that shows a great interest in what's going on and a willingness to want to do things the right way. So thanks for that. It means a lot to us. So let's get those questions up here, and we'll take a look at you know, some that have been answered already and maybe some that have not been answered already. Tom, do you want me to do that from my screen? Or do you have it?
If you want to pull it up on yours, it's probably easier. That way, some are anonymous, so I would want to respect their privacy on the questions.
Sure, I got you. Okay. So we'll just kind of run through these quickly, and hopefully there's some short answers. Some might be long. We've answered 45 of these questions already, so those will be posted, and then 24 that haven't been answered yet will get in. So in July, can we have a camp with junior high kids to get them some skill and drill work? The answer is yes. You can have a camp for those kids once July gets here, because that is when out of season contact opens as well. Second question is, if a position player licks his hands, will time be called then as well? And the answer is when the umpire does. Yep, he'll kill it and time will be called. Do you have a list of the most dangerous, vulnerable pre-existing conditions that our coaches and AD should be aware of with our athletes? I don't, and I think I would go to the Department of Health for that, or I don't know about your districts. Ours, even when teachers went on field trips, our school nurse got them a list of kids and what their situations were. So you might want to reach out to your health professional at your school and find out who's got what conditions. People keep rosin bags behind the mound. Is it okay to keep sanitizer at the mound as well? Jared and Todd, have you guys had that question before? I wouldn't put a gallon jug of it.
We haven't had one to keep it out and play. We've had it if it's on a person.
Right.
Let us do some checking on that one.
Yep, we'll get back to that one. Suggestions on what to use for sanitizing baseballs. We don't, unless Jared and Todd, if you've heard from another organization that's figured that one out. I think we've just said talk to your maintenance guys about what you might be able to use to sanitize leather, right?
I said I'll contact some manufacturers and see if they think of something or if they think it'll start to deteriorate the composition of the baseball. But I'll visit with them here to see if I can find some exact answers.
Right. Could you have a parent meeting prior to the game starting? Yes. I just wouldn't have the kids there. If you're going to have a parent meeting, that's fine. Just have it separate from when your kids are around. I think we just.
And I think we would say, one. Tom. I think going back to that parent meeting for June 15th, that should probably be a virtual meeting, and that they should not be having it face to face.
Okay,
I believe we've been consistent with the girls. Jared, am I incorrect on that?
No, the girls there's been a shift. If the players are not there, the parent meeting can occur.
Yep. I think we're okay as long as the players are not there. But you're right, Todd. Earlier we had said no, and it was going to be virtual. I think we tried to answer that one. We're going to figure that out. Can coaches supply cases of bottled water for the team? I think we've said no. I mean, we love the gesture, except again, that's kids grabbing into a supply of those things, and that it's possible that they'll touch more than one. Difference if an infielder licks his hands and fields a ground ball and throws to first.
We're already going to talk about that one.
Okay. Yeah, again, I think I would say we'll look into the ball sanitation, but the rest of it, your maintenance department certainly has sanitizing wipes and sanitizing products that you can use. rubbing up baseballs before the game. Todd and Jared, I'll let you weigh in on that.
The shared equipment is supposed to be sanitized before and after the contest. That's the guidance we have from the DE. So if they're being rubbed up, if you're going to call that your sanitation at that point, that'd be your sanitation at that point.
Mm-hmm. How are you supposed to wash hands if we don't have running water? Then use hand sanitizer when our running water is not available, just like we would anywhere else. How has geographic changed? Well, I think sometimes we've sent people a distance, and we do try to use geography certainly as a factor, but it will probably become more of a priority this year than it has in the past. So do we have to sanitize foul balls before they come back into play?
No.
No.
The only time you have to sanitize it if a player goes to his mouth.
Yep. Do baseballs transfer between dugouts every inning if the defensive team is in charge?
You're going to split balls before the game. So the home team has their allotment. You as the visiting team have your allotment. I know there's a question down there. If we're going to send you baseballs, we're not. We also don't see this as much difference as already what was going on in a regular game or in a regular season of the home team providing baseballs. You're just divvying them up to begin with rather than sending everything to the umpire.
Okay. Do we need the other team to sign the pitch count verification sheet?
I think we're looking at each other. Let us talk about that for a second here outside, and we'll get back to you. I'll write that as a note.
Yep. That's a good question. Seed meetings be virtual? My guess is yes, right?
Your preference?
Yep. We're going to send everybody new baseballs. No, we won't. Pods solely based around location. That'll be a big priority. The location will be a priority. We can't say solely, but it will be a big priority.
Just as if it was a regular season, the weekly 150, 180 would just be for the first 2 weeks of the season.
Okay. How many players in a van or a Suburban? Again, I think I would defer to the DE, but if I were to guess, I would say you're going to be leaving, a bench seat in between people and probably not having more than one person in a bench seat. So you're probably not going to get many in there, but I would. I'll reach out and ask DE if they'll give us some guidance on that one. First baseman throw a ball around the infield prior to the start of the inning.
Yes.
Yes. And that wouldn't be a whole lot different than practice, right? I mean, you're multiple kids are touching the ball. Can you scrimmage another school before June 15th? No, cannot. Light fixtures, I think again that's a local decision. If you feel like you've got a way to sanitize balls that is liquid free, then do it. I don't think we can require that of school districts and make them incur that cost. I think this next question is, I discourage it. I know that's habit, but it's, again, if safety is the issue, then if it's my glove, I should be the only guy touching it. It's probably the safest way to go. Yeah, we'll get back to you on the hand sanitizer on the field. Number of kids in a van, we've talked about that. Yep, again, this is a non-liquid method, and schools are absolutely, thanks for that suggestion, guys. It's a great way to go. And if your school district can do it, that's great. I'd say this one again is a local thing. It's like anything else that you have students that are allergic to something. How does your school mitigate that? And that'll be up to the district to determine.
We are working on the schedules for both our side and Quick Stats. More information will be sent out early next week in your first email of the season.
Okay. Classifications. We have not posted those yet?
They're posted.
They're posted. Okay, they're on our website. Can players help with field work at the end of games? Yes. Stay apart, give them an area, and then sanitize the equipment after they've used it. Yeah, we are saying defensive team should be the one gathering foul balls. The baseballs for district and sub-state, that won't be waived because that's NFHS. So unless Todd and Jared, you've heard something different from NFHS.
No, that's let us talk internal on that one to see how we're going to want to handle that.
Okay. When it gets hot, what's the recommendation for cooling kids without running water, coolers, wet rags? Again, they could, if they want to bring their own cooler that has their own towel and ice, fine. That's fine. Again, some of this, unfortunately, we hate to have these answers, but some of this we've just got to get creative. We've got to figure out how can they individually be responsible for that. Yeah, whatever way Travis, whatever way you guys can strategize, develop a plan, if the bucket thing works, then yeah, you probably can go that route. First district game, July 9th, correct?
That's the 1A Piggies. There'll only be about 4 or 5 games of that. So it's everybody else from 1A and 2A. All of 1A will open up on the 11th. If they don't, again, other than 4 or 5 games, it will happen on the 9th. So majority of 1A will open on the 11th, with 3 through 6 seeds in 2A open on the 11th as well too.
Mm-hmm. Benches or buckets to sit on in the extended dugouts so the kids don't have to stand or sit on the ground. Have we talked through that?
You can provide benches to extend.
We would recommend, yeah, we'd recommend benches to go down again, and that is an area that is part of the dugout. So there should be a painted, marked off area. So if you're going to go inside the fence line, down the foul line, that should be a painted dead ball area. So once the ball goes in there, it is dead, even if it comes back out. So
okay, sounds good.
Yes,
Thank you.
Permitted.
Perfect. Ice machine, yeah, using sanitary method, right? So you've got a scoop, and you scoop it into a plastic bag, and one kid is going to have the plastic bag to ice their arm down. I don't see anything wrong with that. Trainer in the dugout, yep, that's an essential person as listed. All right, so the defensive team is chasing a foul ball and a fan already picked it up. Should the player get the ball from the fan? I'd say that's okay. Bring it back to the dugout, sanitize your hand. Make sense?
I don't think that the way players are required to chase those foul balls. like I said, if a fan gets it, they'll bring it back to the defensive dugout. So I don't think we're having you designate one of your substitutes that you have to go chase them down. The home team, that might be their responsibility. They might have their 2 kids might be the ones, or 3 kids that even innings you go chase the foul balls, and the odd innings it's somebody else, and they just need to know which one is supposed to send it to. So.
Stop and eat after a game, that's going to be your district's decision whether you guys can do that or not. Volunteer coach who does stats but provides game info on those stats. If it's a certified coach, it's somebody that has a state authorization or a state endorsement, then they can be in the dugout if they're associated with your team. If they're not authorized or have an endorsement, then the answer is no. So, okay, I see what you're saying here. That'd be a forfeit, right? Not a reseed.
That's how we've handled stuff in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then David's question on the guide, is that guidance for the defensive team? Yes. Yeah. When you're talking about foul balls and things like that. Yeah. Do players need to wear batting helmets if they're in the extended dugout area? Let us look at that.
Talk about that. Yeah.
Yep. Let us look at that. Team photos, I think I'd avoid those. Pretty hard to social distance. Some photographers will tell you they can, take individual pictures and put something together that looks like a team picture, but I think it just makes sense to not have kids that close together while you're getting ready to take a picture.
If that's what you're going to do at your facility, is extend it out. And yes, if that bad throw goes into that dead ball area, yes, then they're going to get that extra base. So if you want to put them behind the fence, depending on how your field is set up, again, you can have a bleacher area that's behind the fence. And if there's a gate or something close by where those kids can then get into the field of play if they need to, that's permissible. But if you're going to extend it inside the field of play and that's your dead ball area, then yes, that is what would occur, is there would be a dead ball and they get the base. So you have to decide in your facility how that would work or would not work. So if you want to, put up something portable in front of that area that's safe, to do so, then that's your prerogative.
Okay. Yep. On the clarification there, right now we're saying 72 hours because that's what we're hearing from county health departments is 72. Baseball cleaning suggestion is, the good suggestion. It just has to, there'd have to be something that says it kills germs, I guess, and not just cleans marks, but as long as it kills germs, then the answer on that one would be great suggestion. Yep. Okay. Yep. Thanks for that. All right.
What we'll do is we will, like I said, the questions that have been asked here, what we did for the 80s is that we went through and again, this will be recorded, or we'll try and go back through and type in the answers to some of the questions that have been sent to us here. So we will have written responses.
You bet. And we'll post those as well. So it looks like we're through the questions, and again, thanks everybody for joining us, and hopefully we clarified a few things. You know how these things are. Sometimes they bring up more questions than they do answers, but hopefully we gave you a little information that's going to help. Our goal for you is to have you guys just have to worry about the game part of it, and not worry about the other things. But obviously you get pulled into it. Baseball's unique. You guys do a lot, in the summer, whether it's the facility, the equipment, you're probably doing as much or more than anybody. So we thank you for that. Looks like we have one last question here. Our individual that does pitch count also assists in sanitizing. Is he considered essential, allowing him to be in the dugout? I think the answer to that is, let's, I'm not, Mitch, I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but let's not find ways for people to be in there. If we've never had somebody sanitize balls before, so is this person really the one, or could a player do it? Could somebody else? But I guess if that's the person, and even the ball sanitizing can be done outside the dugout. Just remember, we're just trying to limit the number of people in there so that we don't have people close to each other. Andy Griner, you're asking, since indoor facilities can be used on rain days, can they be used daily with distancing? The answer is yes. If you have indoor cages, yeah, you can do that. That's okay. Yep.
Just work with your athletic director on that one.
Yep.
As there are some requirements for inside usage and sanitation that goes along with it.
Right. So no bat boys, that's correct. No bat boys or bat girls. Again, we're just trying to limit the number of people that are interacting with each other. All right. Well, we're going to sign off, everybody. Again, we will have this webinar recorded and posted. We'll post the slide deck. We'll post the questions and answers so that you've got some reference. And as always, feel free to reach out to any one of the three of us, and we'll do everything we can to get your questions answered. Best of luck to you on Monday when you get together with your kids, and hopefully there's a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm there. So thank you very much.